Hi, my name is Ross McKinstry, and this is our HORT 4050 crop evaluation for greenhouse management. So for our production steps on August 9th and the 14th, right between those two dates, we got our plugs from Doom and Orange, which were poinsettias, and then we got the rest of our plugs from James Greenhouses. Um, for our benches, we had 10 total benches, and they were used with 5 tables using one dosatron on each side. So for the first half, we had one extra bench with a bunch of different crops from James Greenhouses. And then the next four or five were poinsettias for that one dosatron, and then the other half of the greenhouse was the second dosatron at a different rate, and those were James Greenhouse plugs. Every week on Monday, we would check the north to south, east to west measurements as well as the height. On every Wednesday, we would check pH and EC to make sure that the nutrients that were going in were at the right rate and they weren't going too high or too low. Um, the greenhouse was regularly scouted for pests and diseases. We made sure every week to see if we had anything, so we could go ahead and cut the problem right then and there. And then the plant sale and pricing, well, that was decided on November 18th, with the plant sale taking place on November 20th, and it was a very good sellout. So the activities, like I said, the monitoring, we measure the pH and EC values. We use that with a handheld meter weekly. Each crop had a desired range for these readings, so we used the values from the readings to adjust the watering and our fertilization schedule. Our irrigation, we had an independent water line for each bench, with half poinsettias of the greenhouse running under one irrigation zone, and for that dosatron, and then the sorted half of the greenhouse using the second one. So for the fertilization, we used Jack's Nutrients, which was at 15,520. The plant fertilization, it was regulated with the aid of two dosatrons. So the application rates, they were adjusted for each poinsettia, or for the poinsettias, and then the other was for the assorted plants. We also used PGR applications, and we applied those every other week or every other 2 to 3 weeks, depending on when we decided on using it. So for our plants grown, so for the poinsettia tables, we had poinsettia Freya pink, uh, Freya red, Freya white, nobilis, red ribbons, H759JA, red jewel, Freya marble, and then we had Corpus verticilla moonbeam, hellebore joker. We had sedum, angelina, echinaceas, two different varieties of Haruka, Midnight Rose, and then Caramel. We had Monstera, uh, Gora, Snapdragons, Gerber Daisies, Dianthus, and Hostas.
Hi, my name's Tyler, and I'm going to be covering the pests and diseases part of this presentation. So, one of the major things we had, like a problem within growth of our plants, was overwatering, and we had issues such as botrytis and then like bacterial root rot. Um, One of the main issues with this is not necessarily that we didn't know about it, but they kind of went unnoticed and untreated until right before the plant sale. So we had some Gerber daisies that had really bad botrytis on the flowers. So we basically had to cut all the flowers off, and it really bit into how many we had available to sell. Another problem is that with the plants being overwatered, you lead to things such as like stunted growth, fungus gnats were kind of bad, and that we eventually figured out that we had to cut the irrigation times down to a less frequent watering, but a more deep. So more or less, like instead of watering every day, we watered every 3 days for a little bit longer time. And throughout the year, we kind of had dead flowers and growth that had to be cut off and removed from the plants to prevent these diseases from spreading. Although it did kind of affect the aesthetic value of the plants, it did prevent disease from spreading. I'm also going to cover fertilization. So one of the main fertilizers we used was a Jack's Nutrients 15,520 fertilizer that we injected at a 1 to 100 ratio for all the perennials. And for the poinsettias, we injected it at a 1 to 50 ratio because they're a more nutrient intensive plant. All the other plants, we kind of used a 1 to 200, just a basic, just borderline, just basic fertilization to keep it from getting too fertilized and leading to phytotoxicity. Um, we kind of did this at a rate of like 378.5 gallons of water. And then we added Epsom salt into the 2 gallon buckets to be injected separately from the fertilizer. For the concentration of the poinsettias, we did a 300 ppm, and all the other plants tended to be at 150 ppm.
Hi, my name's Sam Tudor. I'll be going over the business strategy and sale. So, as a class, we met on November 18th to discuss our plant pricing. And so, while we were there, we discussed like individual prices as well as just overall business strategy. One thing that we elected is once you spend at least $50, that you get like another plant free aside from Monsteras. And then one of thing that was important during our plant pricing was the price of our monsters. We originally priced them at $50, but discovered throughout the sale that they weren't really moving, so we ended up pricing them down to $35. As well as the sale happened on November 20th. It started around 2 p.m. That's when we started really picking up some traction. It ended around 5:30 p.m. Over that period of time, over 3.5 hours, we netted a total of $3,845. So pros and cons of the sale. A couple of pros. So one entrance and one exit seemed to help, as it made the customers like kind of explore the area. It funneled everybody in one direction, and so you have customers coming in empty-handed, seeing other customers leave with plants, and so that kind of encourages people to like buy something. Also, marking down the price of the monasteries from 50 to 35 also seemed to help them move a lot. We found that during like the first or second hour, a lot of customers were dissuaded from purchasing those monasteries, even though they're very popular. And after marking down the price, they moved significantly more. Also, in terms of marketing, although we did post to social media websites, it was pretty short term. And so we had people on the roadsides flagging down customers, which actually proved to be very effective. We had several different customers say that that part of the reason, if not the reason, they stopped was because there were people who were on the roadside. As for cons, the more popular poinsettias were near the entrance, meaning that so the more popular poinsettias were typically the red ones. So they sold more, and the less popular ones, like the caramel colored or the white ones, were behind the red ones and actually at the very back of the greenhouse. And so a lot of customers who were coming and looking for poinsettias saw the red ones first, and because they're more traditional, ended up picking those over some of the less traditional ones. So I think if we were to put the different varieties ahead of the red poinsettias, that it would force customers to pass by them, go get the red ones that they want, and then pass back by them again, possibly increasing the amount of attention that they're getting. Also, there was only one day of sales. I know in years past that they've had two different days of sales, and so although it wasn't possible, I think that would help out a lot next year having a plant sale before and after Thanksgiving break. It gives time for like word of mouth to spread because we had several customers asking if there were going to be other days of sales so that they could either come back and buy more plants or that they could tell their friends or family about the sale that they had just visited and possibly bring in that attention. So I'm sure that in the future, if we were to have a second day of sales, that it would drum up more attention and give us more time. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to our presentation.